After that night, she got pregnant, and the reserved CEO was tamed and became a loving daddy. The steady click of Scarlett Bennett's heels echoed through the marble-floored corridor of Carter Enterprises' executive floor. At 7:15 a.m., the office remained eerily quiet, just as she preferred it. These early morning moments, before the chaos of the day began, were her sanctuary, a time when she could focus without the weight of judgmental stares or whispered comments about how she'd managed to secure her position as executive assistant to Alexander Carter himself. The answer was simple: pure, unrelenting determination. The same determination that had carried her from a modest home in Brooklyn to graduating summa cum laude from Columbia, and finally landing this coveted position at one of New York's most prestigious corporations. At 25, Scarlett had learned early that the world wouldn't hand her anything, especially not as a black woman in corporate America. She settled at her desk, immediately pulling up Alexander's schedule for the day. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows caught on her deep brown skin, warming her despite the office's perpetual chill. Today would be particularly challenging: 3 board meetings, 2 international video conferences, and a crucial contract negotiation that could make or break their expansion into the Asian market. The soft ding of the elevator announced his arrival right on schedule. Alexander Carter moved like a force of nature through the office, his presence commanding attention, even in complete silence. At 34, he'd already built Carter Enterprises into a global powerhouse, earning both respect and fear throughout the business world. His steel-grey eyes barely acknowledged her as he passed, his voice clipped and precise. Morning briefing. It wasn't a request. Scarlett gathered her tablet and followed him into his office, her stride matching his longer one with practiced ease. The Manhattan skyline provided a dramatic backdrop through the wall of windows behind his desk, the early morning sun casting long shadows across the minimalist space. "The board meeting has been moved to 8:30 at Richardson's request," Scarlett began, her voice steady and professional. "Since the latest projections for the Asian market expansion are ready for review, and legal has flagged several points in the contract that require your attention before this afternoon's negotiation." Alexander's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Richardson's trying to throw me off balance. He's been pushing back ever since the merger announcement." He loosened his tie slightly, the only sign of frustration he ever allowed himself to show. "What else?" Your father called again. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alexander's fingers stilled on his keyboard, his knuckles whitening slightly before he forced them to relax. "Delete the message. He mentioned it was about your mother. I said delete it." His voice carried an edge that would have made most people flinch. But Scarlett had spent the last 2 years learning to read the currents beneath Alexander's frozen exterior. The slight strain around his eyes told her more than his words ever could. "Of course, Mr. Carter." She made a note on her tablet, keeping her expression neutral. "Would you like me to stay late tonight to prepare for tomorrow's presentation?" Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, before the mask slid back into place. "That won't be necessary. I'll handle it." But Scarlett knew better. She'd seen the mountain of work on his desk, the meetings that would consume his entire day. The presentation needed to be perfect, and Alexander's perfectionism was legendary. He'd be here until midnight if left to his own devices. "With all due respect, sir, the Asian market data needs to be completely restructured to address the board's concerns from last quarter. I've already started compiling the necessary information." She met his gaze steadily, professional but unwavering. "It would be more efficient if I handled the initial draft." Alexander studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Most people wilted under that stare, but Scarlett had long since learned that backing down only earned his contempt. Finally, he gave a slight nod. "Have it on my desk by 8 p.m. "Yes, sir." Scarlett turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. "Bennett." She paused, looking back over her shoulder. Alexander had already returned his attention to his computer screen, his voice distant. "Good work on the Morrison account last week. The client specifically mentioned your handling of the situation." The praise, rare as a summer snow, caught her off guard. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." Outside his office, Scarlett released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. In 2 years, she could count on one hand the number of times Alexander Carter had offered direct praise. The man approached emotions the way he approached business deals, with careful calculation and iron control. The day unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Scarlett moved between meetings and calls, anticipating needs before they arose, smoothing ruffled feathers, and keeping the machine of Carter Enterprises running with precision. By 7 p.m., most of the office had emptied, leaving her alone with the gentle hum of her computer and the soft glow of the city lights beginning to twinkle awake outside. The presentation was nearly complete when her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Madison. "Girl, you cannot skip another Friday night. Your work ethic is admirable, but your social life is on life support. One drink, just one. The new rooftop bar on 5th is calling our names." Scarlett smiled, despite herself, glancing at the time. She could finish the presentation in another hour, and maybe Madison had a point. When was the last time she'd done anything just for fun? The sound of approaching footsteps made her look up. Alexander emerged from his office, his tie loosened and jacket draped over one arm. He stopped at her desk, eyes falling on her still illuminated computer screen. "You're still here." "Just finishing up the presentation, Mr. Carter. I'll have it to you in an hour." He frowned slightly, an expression she'd learned to read as confusion rather than disapproval. "It's Friday night, Bennett. The presentation can wait until Monday. I prefer to finish what I start, sir." She met his gaze steadily, noting the shadows under his eyes that even his careful composure couldn't quite hide. "Unless you'd rather I didn't." For a moment, something almost like amusement touched his features. "Stubborn," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Then, louder, "Lock up when you leave. And Bennett, yes, don't make a habit of sacrificing your Friday nights. The company won't fall apart if you occasionally have a life outside these walls." With that cryptic comment, he was gone, leaving Scarlett staring after him in surprise. Had Alexander Carter, workaholic extraordinaire, just encouraged her to maintain a work-life balance, the same man who she'd seen sleeping in his office more times than she could count? Her phone buzzed again with another message from Madison, and Scarlett made a decision. The presentation was good enough. Maybe it was time to remember that life existed beyond the gleaming walls of Carter Enterprises. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that this Friday night would change everything. One decision, one moment of weakness, would set in motion a chain of events that would shatter the careful boundaries between her and Alexander Carter forever. The rooftop bar on 5th Avenue pulsed with energy, its elegant crowd bathed in the warm glow of string lights and the neon shimmer of the Manhattan skyline. Scarlett leaned against the glass railing, letting the cool autumn breeze play with loose strands of her carefully styled hair. Madison had been right. She needed this. "I can't believe you actually came." Madison clinked their glasses together, her infectious smile brightening the night. "I was starting to think Carter had you chained to that desk." Scarlett rolled her eyes, but couldn't suppress her own smile. "He actually told me to have a life outside work, if you can believe it. The Ice King himself suggested work-life balance. Now I've heard everything." Madison's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her glass. "Speaking of our favorite CEO, have you heard the rumors?" "What rumors?" "Apparently, the board is pushing back hard against his latest acquisition plan. Word is, they think he's being too aggressive, too fast. Some are even suggesting bringing in outside leadership to stabilize things." Scarlett frowned. She'd noticed the tension in recent board meetings, but Alexander had seemed unshakable as always. "Where did you hear this?" "My cousin works in legal at Richardson's firm. She says—" Madison's eyes suddenly widened, fixed on a point over Scarlett's shoulder. "Oh my God. Speaking of the devil." Scarlett turned, her heart skipping a beat. There, at the bar's entrance, stood Alexander Carter himself. Gone was his usual pristine suit, replaced by dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. A stunning blonde hung on his arm, laughing at something he'd said. "That's Catherine Montgomery," Madison whispered. "Her father owns half of Boston's shipping industry. Rumor has it they've been seeing each other for months." Scarlett forced herself to look away, ignoring the inexplicable twist in her stomach. "It's none of our business," says the woman who probably knows more about his life than his own mother. Madison's teasing smile faded as she studied Scarlett's face. "Wait, don't tell me you—" "Don't even finish that thought." Scarlett drained her glass, the alcohol burning pleasantly warm in her chest. "He's my boss, nothing more." The night progressed, and Scarlett managed to forget about Alexander's presence. Mostly, she danced with Madison, laughed with old college friends who'd joined them, and steadfastly avoided looking in his direction. But as midnight approached and the crowd thinned, she found herself alone at the bar, waiting for one last drink before calling it a night. "Bourbon neat," a familiar voice ordered beside her, "and another of whatever she's having." Scarlett stiffened, not turning. "Mr. Carter, I think after hours you can call me Alexander." He settled onto the bar stool next to her, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space. "Enjoying your Friday night?" "Yes, thank you." She finally looked at him, noting the slight flush in his cheeks that suggested he'd been drinking. "Though I'm surprised to see you here. I thought this wasn't your usual scene." Something darkened in his expression. Catherine insisted. "She's currently networking with half of Manhattan's elite." His tone carried a bitterness she'd never heard before. The bartender placed their drinks before them, and Scarlett wrapped her fingers around her glass, desperate for something to do with her hands. "Trouble in paradise?" Alexander's laugh was sharp and humorless. Paradise, more like a carefully orchestrated business arrangement. Her father's shipping empire would be a valuable addition to Carter Enterprises' portfolio. He took a long drink. "The board would certainly approve. Is that all relationships are to you? Business arrangements?" The words slipped out before she could stop them, sharper than intended. Alexander turned to face her fully, his grey eyes intense in the dim light. "Isn't that all they ever are? People wanting something from each other, making deals, negotiating terms." His voice dropped lower, almost intimate. "At least in business, the terms are clear." Scarlett should have walked away, should have made her excuses and called a car. Instead, she found herself drawn into his gravity, challenging him as she never would have dared in the office. "That's a cynical way to view the world." "It's realistic." His eyes traced her face, lingering on her lips. "Everyone wants something, Scarlett. The trick is figuring out what—" Her name on his lips sent a shiver down her spine. "And what do you want?" The question hung between them, charged with possibility. Alexander's hand moved to her knee, his touch burning through the fabric of her dress. "Right now," his voice was rough, "to forget about business deals and board meetings and expectations, to do something purely because I want to." Warning bells screamed in Scarlett's mind, but the alcohol and the late hour had softened her usual sharp edges. When Alexander stood and held out his hand, she took it. The ride to his penthouse passed in a blur of heated looks and electric silence. In the elevator, he pressed her against the wall, his kiss desperate and demanding. Scarlett knew this was a mistake, knew it would complicate everything, but in that moment, she didn't care. His apartment was exactly as she'd imagined. Minimalist, expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But she barely had time to take it in before Alexander's lips found hers again, his hands tangling in her hair. They came together like a storm breaking, all the tension of the past 2 years exploding into passionate need. Alexander's controlled facade cracked, revealing something raw and hungry beneath. When he whispered her name against her skin, it sounded like a prayer. Later, as the first hints of dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, reality began to seep back in. Scarlett lay awake, watching Alexander's sleeping form beside her. In sleep, the hard lines of his face softened, making him look younger, almost vulnerable. This changed everything. Come Monday, they would have to face what they'd done, have to navigate the complicated waters of their professional relationship with this new weight between them. Silently, Scarlett slipped from the bed and gathered her clothes. As she dressed, her eyes fell on a framed photo she'd never seen before, a young Alexander with a woman who had to be his mother, both smiling in a way she'd never seen him smile before. The sight made her chest ache. This glimpse of his private world, of the man behind the carefully constructed walls, made what she had to do even harder. She left before he woke, the morning air crisp against her flushed skin. In the taxi home, she pushed away thoughts of his touch, his taste, the way he'd looked at her as if she were something precious and rare. This was a one-time mistake, nothing more. She would not let one night of weakness destroy everything she'd worked so hard to build. But as she stepped into her apartment, her phone buzzed with a text. "Alexander, we need to talk." Scarlett stared at the message until her vision blurred, knowing that no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Scarlett had spent the weekend alternating between ignoring Alexander's messages and drafting resignation letters she'd never send. But as the elevator carried her toward the executive floor, she knew running away wasn't an option. She'd worked too hard to let one night derail her career. The office hummed with its usual morning energy, but everything felt different. The familiar walk to her desk seemed longer, each step weighted with the memory of Alexander's touch. She'd barely settled in when his voice cut through her thoughts. "My office." "Now." Scarlett's spine stiffened at his tone. cold, professional, as if Friday night had never happened. She followed him inside, her tablet clutched like a shield against her chest. The morning sun streaming through the windows felt too bright, too exposing. Alexander stood behind his desk, his posture rigid. "You ignored my messages. I thought it would be better to discuss this in person." Scarlett kept her voice steady, professional. "Mr. Carter, don't!" He cut her off, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Don't pretend this is just another business meeting. What would you prefer? That we discuss our personal choices during office hours? That we risk everything we've both worked for?" The words came out sharper than intended, weighted with fear and something deeper she refused to name. Alexander moved around the desk, closing the distance between them. "How you ran? I made a strategic retreat." Scarlett forced herself to meet his gaze. "What happened was a mistake. We both know that." Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or anger. "A mistake," he repeated, the words flat. "Is that what you really think?" Before she could answer, a knock at the door made them both jump. Richardson, the head of the board, entered without waiting for a response. His shrewd eyes took in their positions, a slight smirk playing at his lips. "Am I interrupting something?" "Not at all." Alexander's mask slid seamlessly back into place. "Bennett was just updating me on the Asian market presentation." "Ah, yes? About that?" Richardson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The board has some concerns about the expansion timeline. We'd like to schedule an emergency meeting for this afternoon." Scarlett watched the muscle in Alexander's jaw tighten. "Schedule it," he said dismissively, already turning back to his computer, but Richardson lingered. "We're also curious about your recent personal choices, Alexander. That scene at the rooftop bar on Friday, Catherine Montgomery was quite upset." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Scarlett's heart hammered against her ribs as Alexander slowly looked up. "My personal life is not the board's concern. Everything about Carter Enterprises is the board's concern." Richardson's voice hardened. "Your father built this company on relationships and stability. Your recent behavior suggests you might need guidance in maintaining both." The mention of his father hit like a physical blow. Alexander's hands clenched on the desk, his knuckles white. "Is that a threat, James? Consider it friendly advice." Richardson's eyes slid to Scarlett. "We wouldn't want anything to damage the company's reputation, would we?" After he left, the silence stretched thick and heavy between them. Scarlett's mind raced, connecting dots she'd been too distracted to see before. "Catherine Montgomery," she said quietly. "The board arranged that match, didn't they?" Alexander's laugh was bitter. "Twice my father's last gift before he walked out. A network of powerful connections who think they own me." He turned to the windows, his reflection fractured in the glass. "The Montgomery merger would stabilize our position in the Northeast. The board sees Catherine as the perfect CEO's wife. Well-connected, socially adept, malleable. And what do you see?" He turned back to her, his eyes intense. "I see politics and power plays. I see my father's shadow still controlling my life." His voice dropped lower. "But when I'm with you, I see something real, something that's mine, not theirs." The words sent warmth blooming in her chest, but Scarlett forced it down. "We can't," she whispered. "There's too much at stake. There's always too much at stake." Alexander moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "But for once in my life, I want to choose something for myself." The door opened again before she could respond. Madison burst in, her face pale. "Scarlett, you need to see this." She thrust her phone forward, open to a gossip blog. There, in grainy but unmistakable detail, was a photo of Scarlett and Alexander entering his building Friday night. The headline screamed, "Carter Enterprises CEO's late-night rendezvous with employee scandal brewing." The blood drained from Scarlett's face. She looked up to find Alexander already on the phone, his voice clipped and cold as he barked orders to his PR team. But it was the look in his eyes that scared her most. Not anger or fear, but a calculating determination she recognized from countless business deals. He was already strategizing, planning damage control. And somehow, Scarlett knew that whatever solution he crafted would protect the company first, regardless of the personal cost to either of them. As if confirming her fears, her phone buzzed with a meeting invitation. Board of Directors, 2 p.m. Subject, Personnel and Policy Review. The carefully constructed walls between their professional and personal lives were crumbling, and Scarlett had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that in her body, A tiny spark of life had already taken hold, about to complicate everything even further. The boardroom felt like a courtroom, its mahogany walls closing in as 13 pairs of eyes scrutinized Scarlett. She sat straight-backed in her chair, refusing to show weakness despite the wave of nausea that had been plaguing her all morning. Whether from stress or that questionable breakfast decision, she couldn't afford to appear anything less than composed. Alexander sat at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone. The morning's gossip blog had exploded across social media, spawning dozens of speculative articles about their relationship. The PR team had been in crisis mode for hours, but the damage was spreading like wildfire. "So this is precisely the kind of scandal we don't need," Richardson's voice cut through the tension, especially not with the Asian market deal hanging in the balance. "Our partners in Seoul are already expressing concerns about stability and leadership. The photo shows nothing inappropriate," Alexander stated flatly. "2 employees working late. Any other interpretation is pure speculation." An older board member, Patricia Walsh, cleared her throat. "And Ms. Montgomery's rather public accusations. She's been quite vocal about your behavior at the rooftop bar." Scarlett's stomach churned again. She hadn't seen Catherine's social media posts, but Madison had filled her in. A string of not-so-subtle tweets about betrayal and office affairs. "My personal life is not up for discussion." Alexander's tone could have frozen hell itself. "So we're here to discuss the Asian market expansion." "On the contrary," Richardson leaned forward, his smile predatory, "your personal choices directly impact this company's reputation. Your father understood that." "My father," Alexander cut in, his voice deadly quiet, "is not in this room." The tension crackled like electricity. Scarlett pressed her hand against her stomach, willing the nausea to subside. The room felt too warm, too bright. "Perhaps," Patricia suggested smoothly, "we should consider a temporary reassignment for Ms. Bennett, to avoid any appearance of impropriety." "No," Alexander's response was immediate, absolute. "Bennett is essential to the Asian market negotiations. Her work on this project has been invaluable." "Then you admit there's something to protect her from?" Richardson pounced on the defensive tone. Scarlett stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Excuse me," she managed before rushing from the room. She barely made it to the bathroom before emptying her stomach, her body shaking with the effort. When she emerged from the stall, Madison was waiting with a concerned expression and a bottle of water. "Girl, you look like death warmed over." "Thanks," Scarlett muttered, rinsing her mouth. "Just what every woman wants to hear." "I'm serious." Madison pressed a cool hand to her forehead. "You're not running a fever, but this is the 3rd time this week you've gotten sick. Maybe you should see a doctor." "It's just stress." Scarlett straightened her blazer, checking her reflection, between the board meeting and the media circus. "And the fact that you've been avoiding a certain CEO like he's carrying the plague," Madison raised an eyebrow. "You can't keep running forever, Scar. Watch me." But as they returned to the office, Scarlett found Alexander waiting by her desk. His tie was slightly loosened, the only visible sign of the strain he was under. "My office," he said quietly. "Please." The please caught her off guard. In 2 years, she'd rarely heard him use the word. She followed him inside, noting how he closed the blinds before turning to face her. "Are you all right?" The genuine concern in his voice made her chest ache. "I'm fine, just a stomach bug." "The board wants to transfer you to the London office." He ran a hand through his hair, messing up its perfect styling. "They're painting it as a promotion. International Operations Director. London?" The word felt hollow in her mouth. "When?" "Immediately. They're prepared to make the announcement this afternoon." His jaw clenched. "It's a power play. They think they can control me by removing you from the equation." "Maybe they're right." Scarlett wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "Maybe some distance would be good for both of us." Alexander moved closer, his eyes intense. "Is that what you want? To run away to London?" "What I want doesn't matter. This situation is affecting the company, your position." "Damn the company!" The force of his words made her jump. "For once in my life, I'm asking what you want, Scarlett. Not what's best for Carter Enterprises, not what the board wants. What do you want?" The room spun slightly, and Scarlett gripped the edge of his desk for support. The nausea was back, along with a dizziness that made the floor feel unsteady. "I want—" Her voice faltered as black spots danced at the edges of her vision. "I want—" The last thing she saw was Alexander's face transforming from frustration to alarm as her knees buckled. Strong arms caught her before she hit the floor, and his voice seemed to come from very far away. "Get a doctor, now." As consciousness slipped away, a tiny voice in the back of her mind whispered a truth she wasn't ready to face. The missed period she'd attributed to stress, the constant nausea, the dizziness. This wasn't just a stomach bug. This was something that would change everything. In the chaos that followed, Alexander barking orders, Madison calling 911, the concerned murmurs of gathering employees, no one noticed Richardson watching from the doorway, a calculating smile playing at his lips. In his hand, he held a phone, already dialing a familiar number. "Mr. Carter." "Yes, the senior, Mr. Carter. I think it's time you came back to New York. Your son seems to be following in your footsteps in more ways than one." The steady beep of hospital monitors filled the private room as Scarlett slowly regained consciousness. The harsh fluorescent lights made her wince as she opened her eyes, taking in her surroundings. A luxurious private suite. Of course, Alexander would insist on the best medical care money could buy. Speaking of Alexander, he sat in a chair by her bed, his usual impeccable appearance disheveled. His suit jacket was discarded, sleeves rolled up, tie long gone. He stared at a piece of paper in his hands, as if it held the secrets of the universe. "How long was I out?" Her voice came out raspy. Alexander's head snapped up, his eyes intense. 3 hours. He stood, moving closer but not touching her. The doctor ran some tests. Something in his tone made Scarlett's heart skip a beat. The paper in his hands suddenly seemed ominous. "Sast, you're pregnant?" The words fell between them like bombs. 6 weeks. The world tilted on its axis. Scarlett closed her eyes, memories flooding back. The night at the bar, the passionate encounter in his penthouse, the weeks of nausea she'd dismissed as stress. "That's impossible." "I'm on birth control. Apparently, the antibiotics you were taking for bronchitis last month interfered with its effectiveness." His voice was carefully controlled, giving away nothing. "The doctor said it's a common interaction that many people don't know about." Scarlett's mind raced. A baby. Alexander's baby. The implications were staggering. "The board will not be informed." Alexander finally met her eyes, his expression fierce. "Not until we decide how to handle this." "We?" The word came out more bitter than intended. "There is no we, Mr. Carter. You made that clear with your damage control after the photo leaked." "Damn it." "Scarlett." His composure cracked, revealing raw emotion beneath. "Stop pushing me away. This isn't just about you anymore." Before she could respond, the door opened. Madison rushed in, her face a mix of concern and relief. "Thank God you're awake. I've been worried sick." She stopped short, sensing the tension. "Should I come back later?" "No," Scarlett said quickly. "Stay." Alexander's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. "We're not done discussing this." "Yes, we are." Scarlett forced steel into her voice. "I'll submit my resignation tomorrow. The London position won't be necessary." "The hell you will." Alexander moved closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're carrying my child. You're not going anywhere." Madison gasped, her eyes widening. "You're pregnant." The door opened again before Scarlett could respond. A nurse entered, followed by, to everyone's shock, Richardson and an older man whose features eerily mirrored Alexander's. Alexander went completely still. "Father." William Carter Sr. surveyed the room with cold calculation, his presence as commanding as his son's. "I leave for a few years, and this is what becomes of my legacy. Secret affairs? Illegitimate children?" His disapproval cut like a knife. "Your mother would be ashamed. Don't you dare speak of her." Alexander's voice shook with barely contained rage. "You lost that right when you abandoned her, abandoned us, for your 25-year-old secretary. Yet here you are, following in my footsteps." The elder Carter's gaze fell on Scarlett, dismissive and cruel. "Sarah, though at least I had the sense to keep my indiscretions out of the press." Madison stepped forward protectively. "You have no right." "I have every right." William's smile was cold. "As majority shareholder of Carter Enterprises, I have the right to protect this company from my son's poor choices. The board has already voted. Alexander will take a temporary leave of absence while we handle this situation." "Handle this situation." Alexander's laugh was harsh. "And how exactly do you plan to do that, Father? The same way you handled things with Monica?" The name seemed to strike a nerve. William's composed facade cracked slightly. "Monica was different. Was she? Or was she just another inconvenient truth you paid to make disappear?" Alexander moved to stand between his father and Scarlett's bed. "If you think you can buy your way out of this—" "Oh, I'm done buying silence." William straightened his tie. "Ms. Bennett will be offered a very generous settlement package, enough to live comfortably anywhere in the world, far from New York, naturally. The child will want for nothing, provided she agrees to certain terms." Scarlett felt sick again, but not from morning sickness. "Get out!" All eyes turned to her. She pushed herself up in the bed, ignoring the dizziness. "I don't want your money. I don't want your terms. And I certainly don't want your approval, Ms. Bennett." Richardson started, but she cut him off. "This child is not a problem to be solved. It's not a scandal to be managed. And it's certainly not a pawn in your twisted family power games." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "So get out. All of you." William's face darkened. "You clearly don't understand the forces you're dealing with, young lady. One phone call from me, and your career in this city is over." "Then make the call." Scarlett met his gaze steadily. "Because I'd rather work at a coffee shop for the rest of my life than let you anywhere near my child." The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander stared at her with an expression she'd never seen before, something like awe mixed with another emotion she wasn't ready to name. "This isn't over," William said finally, turning to leave. "Alexander, we'll discuss this tomorrow at the board meeting." "No, Father." Alexander's voice was quiet but firm. "We won't. Because as of this moment, I resign as CEO of Carter Enterprises." The room erupted in chaos. Richardson sputtered protests, Madison gasped, and William's face turned an alarming shade of red. But Alexander's eyes never left Scarlett's. In that moment, something shifted between them, something fundamental and irreversible. This wasn't just about a one-night stand anymore. It wasn't about the company or the board or even their careers. This was about a child, their child, and the future they never expected to share. The news of Alexander Carter's resignation exploded across the financial world like a nuclear bomb. Stock prices plummeted, investors panicked, and business networks ran endless speculation about the future of Carter Enterprises. But in the quiet of Alexander's penthouse, none of that seemed to matter. Scarlett stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settled over Manhattan. The doctor had discharged her with strict orders to rest, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Behind her, Alexander paced the length of his living room, phone pressed to his ear. "No, I don't care what the shareholders are saying," he snapped. "The decision is final." He paused, listening. "Then let them sell. I have enough personal shares to maintain control without the board's support." Scarlett turned to study him. Gone was the polished CEO facade. His shirt was untucked, his hair mussed from running his fingers through it countless times. He looked younger somehow, more human. "You shouldn't have done it," she said quietly after he hung up. "Resigned? I mean, my father lost the right to dictate my life a long time ago." Alexander moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not touching. "I won't let him do to our child what he did to me." "Our child." The words sent a shiver down her spine. "And what was that?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city. "When I was 12, my mother got sick. Cancer. My father, he couldn't handle it. Started staying late at the office and having affairs. One day he just left, moved to Europe with his secretary, sent divorce papers through his lawyers." His voice turned bitter. "He didn't even come back for my mother's funeral." "Alexander." Scarlett reached for his hand without thinking. He interlaced their fingers, holding on like she was an anchor in a storm. "I swore I'd never be like him. Built walls, kept everyone at a distance, focused on nothing but the company." He turned to face her, his eyes intense. "Until you—" "Me?" She tried to pull away, but he held firm. "You challenged me, stood up to me, saw through every defense I put up." His free hand came up to cup her cheek. That night, it wasn't just about attraction. It was about finally feeling something real. The confession hung between them, heavy with implications. Scarlett's heart thundered in her chest. "It's not that simple. Your whole life is that company." "Was," he corrected. "Things change. Priorities change." His hand drifted down to rest lightly on her still flat stomach. "Everything changes." The tender gesture brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted, voice barely a whisper. "I know." He pulled her closer, wrapping her in his arms. "Me too." The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Alexander tensed but didn't let go of her. "Come in." Madison burst in, clutching her tablet. "You both need to see this." She pulled up a news website, showing them the headline, "Carter Enterprises Scandal Deepens. Sources Reveal CEO's Secret Half-Sister, Board Cover-Up." The article detailed how William Carter Sr. had fathered a child with an employee named Monica Reynolds 20 years ago. The board had orchestrated a massive payoff and relocation, but the woman had recently died, leaving behind evidence of the cover-up. "Monica," Scarlett breathed, remembering Alexander's earlier words to his father, "You knew." "I found out after my mother died." Alexander's voice was tight. "Monica reached out, showed me proof. She was dying of the same cancer that killed my mother, asked me to look out for her daughter, my sister." His laugh was hollow. "I've been trying to find her for years, but my father's people buried the trail too deep." Madison scrolled through the article. "According to this, her name is Olivia Reynolds. She's 22, lives in Boston. The press is having a field day with the parallel, both Carter men having secret children. This changes everything." Scarlett's mind raced. "The board can't touch us now, not without exposing their own involvement in covering up Olivia's existence." "No," Alexander said slowly, a new determination in his voice. "This changes more than that. The company, the board, my father's whole legacy. It was built on lies and manipulation. It needs to be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up." He looked at Scarlett. "But I can't do it alone." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want you by my side, not as my assistant, not as the mother of my child, but as my partner in everything." His eyes blazed with intensity. "Help me make this right. Help me build something new, something our child can be proud of." The offer took her breath away. This wasn't just about their relationship or the baby anymore. This was about redemption, justice, and the chance to create real change. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Ms. Bennett, my name is Olivia Reynolds. We need to talk." Madison peered at the message. Well, this just got even more interesting. Alexander read the text over Scarlett's shoulder, his body tense with anticipation. "What do you want to do?" Scarlett looked up at him, seeing not the cold CEO she'd worked for, or even the vulnerable man who'd held her that night, but someone new, someone fighting to be better, to do better, someone she could build a future with. "I think," she said carefully, "we should invite your sister for dinner." The smile that broke across Alexander's face was like sunrise after a long night. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Together?" Scarlett nodded, feeling something settle in her chest, something that felt a lot like hope. "Together." Madison watched them with a knowing smile. "I'll handle the press for now. You two, figure this out." She headed for the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "Oh, and Alexander, if you hurt her or that baby, I know where all the bodies are buried at Carter Enterprises." After she left, Alexander chuckled. "Remind me never to get on her bad side. She's just protective." Scarlett leaned into his embrace, suddenly exhausted. "It's been a long day." "Stay," he murmured into her hair. "Not just tonight. Stay with me. Move in here. Let me take care of you both." The old Scarlett would have refused, would have insisted on maintaining her independence, but something had shifted. Sometimes strength meant knowing when to let someone in, when to share the burden. "Okay," she whispered, "but on one condition. Name it. We do this right. No more hiding, no more games. Whatever happens with the company, with your father, with Olivia, we face it together." Alexander tilted her chin up, his eyes full of an emotion that made her heart skip. "I promise," he said softly, and sealed it with a kiss that felt like coming home. The private dining room at Le Bernardin hummed with tension as Scarlett watched the door, her hand unconsciously resting on her stomach. Alexander paced near the windows, his reflection fractured in the rain-streaked glass. They'd chosen this restaurant for its discretion. No press, no prying eyes, just the neutral ground needed for a family reunion 22 years in the making. "She's late," Alexander muttered, checking his watch again. 10 minutes, Scarlett reminded him gently. "In this weather, that's nothing." As if on cue, the door opened. The young woman who entered made them both freeze. Olivia Reynolds had William Carter's steel-grey eyes and Alexander's sharp cheekbones, but her presence was entirely her own. She wore a simple black dress that screamed quiet confidence, her dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders. "Well," she said, her voice carrying a hint of Boston accent, "I guess the family resemblance is hard to deny." Alexander stepped forward, then stopped, seemingly unsure how to greet a sister he'd never met. Olivia solved the dilemma by extending her hand professionally. Olivia Reynolds, though I suppose you already knew that. Alexander Carter. He shook her hand, studying her face. You look like her, like Monica. Something flickered in Olivia's eyes. Mom told me about you, you know. Said you were the only one who tried to help when she got sick. I wasn't fast enough. The regret in Alexander's voice was raw. Guys, by the time I found out, you were there for her funeral. Olivia sat down, her movements deliberate. I saw you standing at the back. I wanted to approach you then, but Mom's lawyers advised against it. Said the timing wasn't right. Scarlett moved to join them at the table, and Olivia's gaze shifted to her with interest. And you must be the other scandal. The one that finally brought down William Carter's house of cards. Scarlett Bennett. She met Olivia's eyes steadily. Though I prefer to think of myself as more than just a scandal. A smile tugged at Olivia's lips. I like her, she told Alexander. She's got fire. Her expression turned serious. But you should both know. You're in danger. Real danger. Alexander leaned forward. Ties, what do you mean? Your father, our father, he's been busy. Olivia pulled out her phone, sliding it across the table. These arrived yesterday. Offers from various news outlets, all wanting an exclusive about my tragic life as William Carter's secret daughter. The money they're offering, it's life-changing. He's trying to control the narrative, Scarlett realized. Get ahead of the story by having you tell it his way. Smart girl. Olivia took a sip of water. But that's not all. Mum left me everything, including proof of what really happened 22 years ago. It wasn't just about the affair or the cover-up. William Carter was embezzling millions through shell companies, using the payoffs to silence people like my mother as cover for bigger financial crimes. Alexander's face darkened. The Asian market expansion. That's why he came back when he did. He needs access to those new accounts. Exactly. And now he's desperate. The board meeting tomorrow isn't just about damage control. It's about maintaining control of those financial channels before anyone can trace them. A waiter entered with their first course, forcing a pause in the conversation. Scarlett used the moment to study Olivia more closely. There was pain there, carefully hidden behind sharp intelligence and dry humor. But there was something else too, a determination that reminded her of Alexander. Why are you telling us this? Alexander asked after the waiter left. You could take those interview offers, tell whatever story you want. Because Mom believed in justice, even when it cost her everything. Olivia's voice softened. And because I've spent 22 years wondering about my brother, wondering if you were anything like him. I'm not, Alexander said firmly. No, Olivia agreed. You're not, which is why I brought this. She reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. Everything Mom collected, bank records, emails, board meeting minutes dating back 2 decades. Enough evidence to not just remove William Carter from power, but to put him in prison. The implications hung heavy in the air. Alexander stared at the drive like it might explode. Using this, it would destroy the company. Thousands of innocent employees would be affected. Then rebuild it. Olivia's eyes flashed. Turn Carter Enterprises into something honorable, something worthy of your child. Scarlett felt Alexander tense beside her. How did you... Please. Olivia rolled her eyes. I'm a pediatric resident. I recognized the signs the moment she walked in. Congratulations, by the way. I always wanted to be an aunt. The casual acceptance, the easy way she included herself in their future, brought unexpected tears to Scarlett's eyes. Damn hormones. Alexander reached for the drive, but Olivia pulled it back slightly. Before you take this, you need to understand something. William Carter won't go down quietly. He's already made moves to freeze your assets, and Richardson is helping him prepare legal challenges to your control of the company. They'll come after everything and everyone you care about. Let them try. Alexander's voice was steel. I've spent my whole life trying not to be like him. Maybe it's time I used what he taught me against him. Not alone, Scarlett said firmly, taking his hand. No, Olivia agreed, finally releasing the drive. Not alone. As if to punctuate her words, both Alexander and Scarlett's phones buzzed simultaneously. Madison had sent the same urgent message to both of them. Emergency board meeting moved up to tonight. William Carter, claiming evidence of financial misconduct. They're voting to remove Alexander from the board entirely. Get back here now. Olivia read the message over their shoulders and stood. Looks like the war starts tonight. She smiled, and for the first time Scarlett saw the family resemblance clearly. The same determined set of the jaw, the same fire in her eyes. Good thing you've got a secret weapon they don't know about. 2, Scarlett corrected, squeezing Alexander's hand. Us, they have no idea what they're up against. Alexander looked between them, the sister he'd just found and the woman carrying his child, and something in his expression shifted from worried to resolute. Then let's go show them. As they left the restaurant, the rain had stopped, leaving the city streets gleaming like possibilities. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. But tonight, something else had been born besides just plans for revenge. A family, unconventional and unexpected, but stronger together than apart. And William Carter was about to learn just how dangerous that could be. The Carter Enterprises boardroom crackled with tension as Alexander and Scarlett and Olivia strode in. William Carter Sr. stood at the head of the table, his confident smile faltering slightly at the sight of his daughter. Board members whispered among themselves, their eyes darting between the siblings. "This is a closed meeting," Richardson snapped. "Miss Reynolds has no place here." "Actually," Olivia's voice carried clearly across the room, "as Monica Reynolds, sole heir and a Carter by blood, I have every right to be here." She pulled out a chair. "Unless you'd prefer I take this conversation to the SEC instead." William's face hardened. "You dare threaten me? Interesting choice of words, father." Alexander remained standing, his presence commanding, "especially given what we've just learned about your own threats over the years." Scarlett moved to the computer at the far end of the room, connecting Olivia's drive to the system. The massive screen behind William flickered to life, displaying financial records and emails that made several board members gasp. "What is this?" Patricia Walsh demanded, leaning forward to study the documents. "This, Alexander's voice was cold, "is 20 years of fraud, embezzlement, and criminal conspiracy. Would anyone like to explain why Carter Enterprises has been making monthly payments to shell companies in the Cayman Islands, companies that, coincidentally, share addresses with certain board members, private holdings?" Richardson jumped to his feet. "These documents are clearly fabricated." "Are they?" Olivia stepped forward. "My mother was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. She kept records of everything, every transaction, every threat, every player in this game. Did you really think she'd let herself be silenced without insurance?" William slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. I will not stand here and be accused by my illegitimate offspring." "No," Alexander cut in, his voice deadly quiet. "You'll stand there and watch as everything you built crumbles, just like you stood there and watched our mother die alone." The screen changed to display a series of emails. Scarlett's voice rang out, clear and professional. "These communications show systematic fraud dating back to the original cover-up of Olivia's existence. But it wasn't just about hiding an affair, was it, Mr. Carter? The payoffs were cover for larger financial crimes, millions siphoned through fake consulting contracts, all authorized by this board." The room erupted in chaos. Board members began shouting, some demanding explanations, others reaching for their phones. Patricia Walsh had gone pale, staring at records that clearly showed her involvement. "You fool!" William snarled at Alexander. "You'll destroy everything. The company, your inheritance, your future." "No." Scarlett stepped forward, one hand protectively over her stomach. "He's saving it from becoming as corrupt and poisonous as you made it." William's eyes narrowed on her gesture, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "Ah yes, the pregnant assistant. Tell me, son, are you even sure it's yours? Women like her—" He never finished the sentence. Alexander moved with frightening speed, grabbing his father by the collar. "If you ever speak about her or our child again, I will—" "Alexander!" Scarlett's voice cut through his rage. "He's not worth it." The doors burst open as federal agents flooded the room. Leading them was a familiar face, Madison, holding her badge. "FBI White-Collar Division," she announced, causing several jaws to drop. "I believe you all have some explaining to do." Scarlett stared at her friend in shock. "You were undercover this whole time." Madison's smile was apologetic. 3 years tracking this case. When you started working here, I had to maintain my cover. But watching you and Alexander these past few weeks, I knew you were the key to bringing it all down." She turned to the board. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're all going to need lawyers." As agents began reading rights and collecting devices, William Carter made one last desperate play. The Asian market contracts, they're set to close tomorrow. Without them, the company will lose billions. You can't— "Actually," Olivia interrupted, "those contracts were renegotiated this morning. The Korean executives were quite interested in dealing with new leadership untainted by scandal." She smiled sweetly. It seems your old contacts weren't as loyal as you thought. Richardson, being led away in handcuffs, turned back. Alexander, be reasonable. We can make a deal. The only deal, Alexander said firmly, will be with the prosecutors. The truth comes out. All of it. As the room cleared, leaving only Alexander, Scarlett, Olivia, and Madison, the weight of what they'd done began to sink in. Years of corruption exposed, lives and careers destroyed, a family legacy forever altered. What happens now? Scarlett asked softly. Alexander pulled her close, his hand covering hers over their growing child. Now we rebuild the right way. He looked at Olivia. Together! The press is going to have a field day, Madison warned. This story has everything. Corporate crime, family drama, secret siblings, forbidden love. Let them talk. Olivia perched on the edge of the table. Some things are worth the scandal. Scarlett felt Alexander tense. The stock price will plummet. Investors will panic. It could take years to recover. Hey, she turned in his arms, forcing him to meet her eyes. How do you trust me? With everything. Then trust that we can build something better, something our child will be proud of. She smiled. Besides, you're not alone anymore. You have a pretty impressive team. Speaking of teams, Madison interrupted, checking her phone. The FBI just froze all of William's personal accounts. His overseas assets are next. He won't be able to retaliate. Relief washed over Alexander's face. Decades of tension finally easing. He looked around the room, at the sister he'd found, the friend who'd helped bring justice, and the woman who'd changed everything. His voice, when he spoke, was thick with emotion. Thank you, all of you. Olivia stood, straightening her dress. Save the thanks for later, big brother. Right now we have a company to save and a family to build. She grinned. And I, for one, can't wait to spoil my future niece or nephew. As they left the boardroom together, the city lights sparkled beyond the windows like stars aligning. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in his life, Alexander Carter wasn't walking it alone, and that made all the difference. 3 months after William Carter's arrest, Scarlett stood in Alexander's penthouse bathroom, staring at her reflection. Her hand traced the slight curve of her belly, now visible beneath her fitted dress. The morning sickness had finally subsided, replaced by a strange mix of excitement and anxiety about the future. The media frenzy hadn't died down entirely, but it had shifted. What began as a scandal had evolved into something of a corporate fairy tale, the corrupt empire brought down by love, truth, and family loyalty. The stock price was slowly recovering, investors reassured by the transparency of the new leadership team. You're going to be late, Alexander called from the bedroom. I'm not sure I should go at all. Scarlett adjusted her dress again. Maybe it's too soon. Alexander appeared in the doorway, looking devastatingly handsome in his charcoal suit. The past months had changed him, softened some edges while sharpening others. He'd stopped slicking back his hair, letting it fall in a more natural style that made him look younger, more approachable. It's your first board meeting as Chief Operating Officer, he reminded her gently. You earned this through nepotism. The fear that had been gnawing at her finally surfaced. That's what everyone's thinking. The pregnant girlfriend, promoted to avoid scandal. Alexander moved behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. No, through years of brilliant work, proven leadership, and the trust of our major investors. His reflection met hers in the mirror. The board voted unanimously. Scarlett, even the new members we didn't choose. Before she could respond, the elevator chimed. Olivia breezed in, carrying coffee for herself and herbal tea for Scarlett. In the months since the takeover, she'd become a regular fixture in their lives, splitting her time between her residency in Boston and her new role as a board member in New York. Ready for the big day, Essis? She handed Scarlett the tea. Don't worry, it's ginger. Good for the baby and your nerves. Thanks. Scarlett took a sip, grateful for the warmth. How can you be so calm? The press is camped outside. Oh, please. Olivia perched on the edge of the marble counter. After everything that's happened, a few photographers are nothing. Besides, they're going to love the story we're giving them today. She was right. Today's board meeting would announce more than just Scarlett's promotion. They were unveiling a complete restructuring of Carter Enterprises, new ethical guidelines, transparent governance, and a foundation dedicated to supporting children of workplace harassment and discrimination. Madison called. Olivia continued. The sentencing hearing is set for next month. The prosecutors are pushing for maximum penalties. Alexander's jaw tightened. Despite everything, hearing about his father's legal troubles still affected him. Scarlett reached back, taking his hand. "We don't have to attend," she said softly. "Yes, we do." His voice was firm. "For Monica, for everyone he hurt." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "But first, we have a company to run." The ride to the office was surprisingly peaceful. Scarlett sat between Alexander and Olivia in the back of the town car, watching the city scroll past. So much had changed in such a short time, yet some things felt more certain than ever. The elevator opened directly into the executive floor, now transformed from its former cold minimalism. Fresh flowers brightened the space, and the walls displayed local artists' work, a touch Olivia had insisted on. Employee photos lined the hallway, faces of the people who had chosen to stay and help rebuild. "Ms. Bennett," Peter, one of the junior analysts, hurried over with a tablet. "The quarterly projections you requested. And congratulations on the promotion." His genuine enthusiasm made Scarlett smile. This was why they'd fought so hard, not just for justice or revenge, but for the people who depended on Carter Enterprises for their livelihoods. The boardroom had changed too. The imposing dark wood had been replaced with warm cherry, the space designed to encourage collaboration rather than intimidation. As they entered, the new board members rose in greeting. "Sir, before we begin," Alexander addressed the room, "I want to thank everyone for their trust during this transition. What we're building here is more than just a company. It's a legacy of integrity, one that future generations can be proud of." His hand found Scarlett's under the table. "Speaking of which," Scarlett stood, heart racing but voice steady. "We have an additional announcement." She smiled at Alexander. "Tamed having a girl." The room erupted in genuine congratulations. Olivia wiped away what she would later deny were tears, while board members shared knowing looks. They'd all seen the changes in Alexander since Scarlett had come into his life, the warmth beneath the former Ice King's exterior. As the meeting progressed, Scarlett felt a familiar flutter in her belly. Their daughter, already making her presence known. She placed her hand there, remembering the first ultrasound, how Alexander had gripped her hand so tight when they heard the heartbeat. A text from Madison lit up her phone. "Just heard from my contacts. William's trying to make a deal. Too late for him. But he's offering information on other corporate criminals. Justice comes in unexpected ways. Proud of you, girl." Looking around the room at Alexander leading with passion instead of cold calculation, at Olivia contributing her fresh perspective, at the diverse faces of their new board, Scarlett felt something settle in her chest. This was what healing looked like. This was what family could be. The meeting ended with unanimous approval of their new initiatives. As people filed out, Alexander pulled Scarlett aside. "And there's something I need to ask you," he said quietly. "Something I've been waiting for the right moment to—" A commotion outside cut him off. Through the glass walls, they could see security confronting someone. Catherine Montgomery, looking desperate and disheveled. "She's been calling my office all week," Olivia murmured, joining them. Apparently, her father's company is struggling since cutting ties with Carter Enterprises. "She wants to negotiate a new deal." Alexander's expression darkened, but Scarlett squeezed his hand. "Hey, this isn't your father's company anymore. We can handle this with compassion." He looked at her with that expression that still made her heart skip, like she was something precious and rare. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said suddenly. "Just us. There's something important we need to discuss." The intensity in his eyes made her pulse quicken. "Okay," Olivia smirked knowingly. "I'll handle Montgomery. You two handle whatever this is." She headed for the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Alexander, don't mess this up." As their laughter faded down the hallway, Scarlett caught their reflection in the boardroom windows. Alexander's arm around her, her hand on their growing daughter, the city spread out before them like a promise. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was theirs to write. The late summer sunset painted Manhattan's skyline in shades of gold and rose, as Scarlett followed Alexander up the familiar path in Central Park. At 7 months pregnant, she'd traded her usual heels for comfortable flats, but she still moved with the same grace that had first caught his attention years ago. "Are you going to tell me where we're going?" she asked, noting how he kept checking his phone. Almost there. Alexander guided her around a bend in the path, and Scarlett stopped short. The bow bridge had been transformed. Thousands of tiny lights twinkled in the gathering dusk, reflecting off the water below. White roses and lilies lined the railings, their sweet scent carrying on the evening breeze. But it was the people waiting that brought tears to her eyes. Olivia stood at the center of the bridge, elegant in a deep blue dress. Madison beside her, both women beaming. Even Peter from the office was there, holding what looked suspiciously like a camera. Alexander, Scarlett turned to find him already on one knee, holding a small velvet box. 2 years ago, he began, his voice rough with emotion, you walked into my office and challenged everything I thought I knew about myself. 1 year ago, you showed me what real strength looks like by standing up to my father. 6 months ago, you helped me build something better than I ever imagined possible. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald ring. But every day, you do something even more extraordinary. You make me want to be worthy of the love you've given me. Scarlett's vision blurred with tears as he continued. I used to think vulnerability was weakness, that keeping people at a distance meant staying in control. Then you came along with your brilliant mind and fearless heart, and showed me that real strength comes from letting people in. He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. You and our daughter are the best things that ever happened to me. So I'm asking, will you marry me? Will you help me build not just a better company, but a better life? Say yes already, Olivia called out, making everyone laugh through their tears. Scarlett pulled Alexander to his feet, cupping his face in her hands. Yes, she whispered. Of course, yes. The kiss they shared was interrupted by their daughter kicking, making them both laugh. Alexander placed his hand on her belly, his touch reverent. I think she approves. Speaking of approval, Madison stepped forward. There's someone else who wanted to be here for this. She nodded toward the other end of the bridge, where an elegant older woman in a wheelchair was being pushed forward by a nurse. Alexander went completely still. Mom? His voice cracked. But they said the cancer was in remission 6 months ago, Olivia finished, moving to hug him. I've been coordinating with her doctors in Switzerland. She's well enough to travel now, and she wanted to be here for this. Alexander moved as if in a dream, dropping to his knees beside his mother's wheelchair. Elizabeth Carter's face was thin but radiant as she cupped her son's cheek. My boy, she said softly, you look so happy. Why didn't you tell me you were better? Alexander's voice was thick with emotion. Because you needed to make these changes for yourself, not for me. Elizabeth turned her warm gaze to Scarlett. Come here, dear. Let me see the woman who helped my son find his heart again. As Scarlett approached, Elizabeth took both their hands in hers. When William left, she said quietly, I feared what it would do to Alexander. Watched him build walls so high, I thought no one would ever break through. She smiled at Scarlett. Thank you for proving me wrong. Their moment was interrupted by the sound of cameras clicking. Peter grinned apologetically. Sorry, but the PR team said we needed photos for tomorrow's announcement. Announcement? Scarlett looked at Alexander questioningly. The press has been speculating about changes in company leadership, he explained. Tomorrow we announce the truth, that Carter Enterprises is becoming Carter and Bennett Holdings. Equal partners, equal ownership, he squeezed her hand. Everything we build together. Madison cleared her throat. And on that note, I have some news too. The prosecutors reached a final deal with William. He'll serve 15 years, and his testimony has already led to 3 other major corporate fraud arrests. He sent this, Elizabeth added softly, pulling out an envelope. It's up to you whether you read it. Alexander stared at the letter, his father's handwriting clearly visible on the front. Finally, he shook his head. Some bridges can't be rebuilt, but that doesn't mean we can't build new ones. As if to emphasize his point, their gathered loved ones began stringing more lights across the bridge. The setting sun transformed the water below into liquid fire, and somewhere in the distance, a violin began to play. Dance with me. Alexander pulled Scarlett close, mindful of her belly. Practice for our wedding. As they swayed together, Scarlett caught glimpses of their future in the faces around them. Olivia showing Elizabeth ultrasound photos, Madison coordinating with the PR team, their company employees who had become like family. All the pieces of a life she never expected, but now couldn't imagine living without. What are you thinking? Alexander murmured against her hair. That sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't plan for. She looked up at him, seeing not the Ice King she'd first met, but the man she'd always known he could be. That love isn't a weakness or a liability. It's the strongest foundation we could build on. Speaking of building, he smiled, his hand resting where their daughter kicked again, we should discuss names. I was thinking, Monica Elizabeth Carter Bennett. Scarlett saw Olivia's head snap up, tears filling her eyes as she realized the tribute to her mother. Elizabeth pressed a hand to her heart, overwhelmed by the inclusion of her name. "Perfect," Scarlett whispered, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "Absolutely perfect." As night fell over New York City, the bridge glowed like a beacon of hope. Below them, the water carried away the last shadows of the past, leaving only the promise of tomorrow. And in the gentle summer breeze, surrounded by the family they'd chosen and the love they'd fought for, Scarlett and Alexander began writing the next chapter of their story, together. After all, the greatest destinies aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we dare to create for ourselves. After following Scarlett and Alexander's intense journey, where love, power, redemption and family intertwine, reflect. If you were in Scarlett's shoes, would you have the same courage to stand up to a corporate empire for love and justice? Or would you have chosen the safer path, accepting William Carter's offer to step aside with generous financial compensation? Think about the consequences that each choice would bring not only to your life, but to everyone around you, including a child on the way. Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.